Okay, we are going to continue this 7-part series on the agreement of sale. We are going to cover pages 5 and pretty much all of 6 today. I'm going to stop at the waiver of contingencies because that'll go into the next session on Tuesday. So page 5, where we left off was number 9, change in buyer's financial status. If a change in buyer's financial status affects buyer's ability to purchase, buyer will promptly notify seller and lenders to whom the buyer submitted a mortgage application, if any, in writing. A change in financial status includes, but is not limited to, the following: loss or change in employment. Okay. Failure or loss of sale of buyer's home. So they had a sale for their house and it fell through. Whether it was contingent or not, it's affecting their purchase. Okay. Buyers having incurred a new financial obligation. That's them going out and buying a car, a boat, or even a engagement ring. We've had that happen. Entry of a judgment against buyer. That would include, for example, all of a sudden they declared bankruptcy somehow. Okay, can't buy a house when you're in the middle of a bankruptcy. Okay, or they now have backed child support, or child support now that's reported. Okay, you know, they have to pay like $750 a month for child support. Well, that could really hinder them buying a house. Okay, a potential buyer's ability to. Buyer understands that applying for and or incurring an additional financial obligation may affect buyer's ability to purchase. So buyer understands that applying for, so even applying, why? Because your credit score can go down if you're getting a lot of inquiries. Okay, so this is a little notice here. It doesn't really say, hey, if it doesn't really talk about if this happens, then the buyer loses their deposit or anything like that. It's almost like a notice. Paragraph number 9 here, a notice. And with any notices, you really should emphasize it when you go over the contract with a client. Hey, don't go out and buy a car. Okay, if you're going to spend anything $500 or greater on your credit card, talk to me or the lender first. Okay, that should be your conversation, especially with a client that's like right on the verge there of their debt to income. Okay. Number 10, seller representations. Okay, so this is what the seller is representing this property as. A, public water, status of water. So it's either public, community, on-site, none, or blank. And you're probably thinking, well, what could be blank? What could you put in there? I've come across a house recently that had a spring-fed well. It was spring-fed. So if you want to be specific, you can put in there spring-fed well. Okay. Community water. Everybody knows on-site water as well, but what's community water? Perfect example of that is any neighborhood where they have their own water source and it gets delivered to only those properties in that neighborhood. Okay. I was ready to say White Rock Acres, but I don't know if they have a community water. I know they have a community sewage system.
Yeah.
Right, Tom?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And what does that cost?
Sewage.
Like $125 a month or something like that?
It's pretty expensive.
So
Still, if it's 125, it's still cheaper what Lemoyne charges.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh. Well, the next one we go into is status of sewer. So we got public, community sewage disposal. Again, same thing. It's where a whole neighborhood shares a system. Okay, and only the houses in that subdivision. 10-acre permit exemption, see notice number 2. Individual on-lot sewage disposal system, see notice number 1. Holding tank, notice number 3 with that one. Individual on-lot sewage disposal system in proximity to well. So that means the the sewage system and the well are a little closer than what they should be, okay? That's notice number 1 and 4, if applicable. None, so see notice number 1, and none available or permit limitations in effect, notice number 5. So what are all these little notices? Well, notice number 1 states that there is currently no existing community sewage system available for the subject property. Section 7 of the PA Sewage Facilities Act provides that no person shall install, construct, request bid proposals for construction, alter, or repair, or occupy any building or structure for which an individual sewage system is to be installed without first obtaining a permit. Buyer is advised by this notice that before signing this agreement, buyer should contact the local agency charged with administering the act to determine the procedure and requirements for obtaining a permit for an individual sewage system. The local agency charged with administering the act will be the municipality where the property is located, or that municipality working cooperatively with others. So basically, you need to be in contact with the sewer enforcement officer, also called the SEO, for the municipality. And most of the times, these SEOs are just normal septic guys as well, but they're hired by the individual municipality, and sometimes adjoining municipalities will share one SEO. Okay. So basically that notice number 1 is just saying you can't do anything or alter the system unless you get a permit. Okay, which is for pretty much many of these homes that have these private systems. Okay. Notice number 2 was linked to this 10-acre permit exemption. So notice number 2, this property is serviced by an individual sewage system installed under the 10-acre permit exemption provisions of Section 7 of the PA Sewage Facilities Act. Okay. Section 7 provides that a permit may not be required before installing, constructing, awarding a contract for construction, altering, repairing, or connecting to an individual sewage system where a 10-acre parcel or lot is subdivided from a parent tract after January 1st, 1987. However, the buyer is advised that soils and site testing were not conducted, and that should the system malfunction, the owner of the property or properties serviced by the system at the time of the malfunction may be held liable for any contamination, pollution, public health hazard, or nuisance which occurs as a result. Okay, I haven't seen too much of that, but you know, if the system was just installed without any kind of permit or anything like that, and if there was any type of contamination as a result, and it gets outside of that parcel and it causes some kind of health issue with people around this property, you're liable. Okay. Notice number 3, and that was, let's see here, that was linked up to the holding tank. Okay. This property is serviced by a holding tank, permanent or temporary, to which sewage is conveyed by a water carrying system and which is designed and constructed to facilitate ultimate disposal of the sewage at another site. Pursuant to the PA Sewage Facilities Act, seller must provide a history of the annual cost of maintaining the tank from the date of its installation or December 14th, 1995, whichever is later. Okay, so a holding tank is a very frowned upon system by lenders. Although some lenders will allow it if you get a letter from the SEO that says a holding tank is a common sewage system in our area. Okay, I'm not saying it's 100% guaranteed, but some lenders will allow financing if it's common enough in that area. Okay, and basically that's where all the sewage goes into a tank, there's no water seepage or anything. Everything is held in there. And I've seen some systems that only need pumped out, 3 times a year, 4 times a year. There are some that needs pumped out monthly, maybe even like bi-weekly even. Okay. And it's very expensive to do so. But, they come in and they pump it and take it away. Okay. Number 4, this one is linked up to individual on-lot sewage disposal system in proximity to a well. Okay. An individual sewage system has been installed at an isolation distance from a well that is less than the distance specified by regulation. The regulations at PA Code 73.13 pertaining to minimum horizontal isolation distances provide guidance. Subsection B states that the minimum horizontal isolation distance between an individual water supply, let's just say well, and the treatment tanks, so the tanks of the septic, shall be 50 feet. Okay. Subsection C states that the horizontal isolation distance between the well and the perimeter of the absorption area, the drain field, shall be 100 feet. So think of it as a little triangle there. The well has to be 50 feet from the tank and 100 feet from the drain field. Okay, and that is a VA FHA guideline. Okay, now, if it's common in the area that the proximity to the well is less than this, the SEO may write a letter and say, yes, this is very common that most wells in our area are only 30 to 40 feet from the water source, and the lender may allow it then. Okay, keyword there is may. Number 5, notice number 5. This lot is within an area in which permit limitations are in effect and is subject to those limitations. So let's say you sell a lot, okay, and you call the sewer enforcement officer and just say, hey, just wanted to make sure this perk and probe is still good. Just checking to see to make sure everything's okay with this lot. And he may say, well, haven't you heard? Our township has a moratorium right now on septic systems. We're not allowing any more. So they may put a stop to that. And obviously, if you can't put a septic system in, then you can't build a house. Okay, so you want to check on that before you sell a vacant lot that you know is going to need well and septic, or at least a septic system. Okay. Any questions on that section? You don't run into it too often, but it's good to know that section so that you, whenever you run into a house with a septic or trying to sell something vacant with a perk and probe, you know what you need to do. Okay. All right, seller representations of historical preservations. Seller is not aware of any historic preservation restrictions regarding the property unless otherwise stated here. If you go and show a house, an older house, and you notice some kind of plaque there that says this house was built or so-and-so lived here in 1764, that's pretty much a telltale sign you need to look and find out if this is part of some kind of preservation. And by preservation, they mean that this property can't be altered. Or if you want to alter it, you need permission. For example, a good one is if the house has wooden windows, and it's always had wooden windows or glass blown windows, and now you want to go in and put in new vinyl triple pane windows by Pella, they may not allow it. They probably won't allow it. Okay. Or it could be something as simple as it's a Victorian from 1820 with historical preservation, and has all these multicolor and you just want to paint it red. You may be limited to the color that you paint. Okay, or you're tired of the wood siding, painting the wood siding, you want to go to vinyl. Yeah, you may not be allowed to do that. Okay, so just be careful about that, and good way to catch that is just call the local historical society. Okay, they should know. All right. Land use restrictions. Property or portion of it is subject to land use restrictions and may be preferentially assessed for tax purposes under the following acts. Okay, we have the Agricultural Right to Farm Act. A common one that we'll see in our area is Farmland and Forest Land Act, or Clean and Green. Okay, that's when you have 10+ acres. The Open Space Act, Conservation Reserve Program, or other. Okay, Pennsylvania Right to Farm. The property you are buying may be located in an area where agricultural operations take place. Pennsylvania protects agricultural resources for the production of food and agricultural products. The law limits circumstances where normal agricultural operations may be subject to nuisance lawsuits or restrictive ordinances. Okay. One big thing where I live in Lower Swadera is there's a chicken farm there, and it smells pretty bad, but they can't do anything about it because they're protected. Okay. Clean and Green program, probably the one I'll go over the most because it's the one we run into the most. Properties enrolled in the Clean and Green program receive preferential property tax assessment. Buyer and seller have been advised of the need to contact the county tax assessment office before the execution of this agreement to determine the property tax implications that will or may result from the sale of the property, or that may result in the future as a result of any change in use of the property or the land from which it is being separated. Okay. So let's just, for easy number sake, just say the normal taxes on a property with Clean and Green is $10,000 a year. Okay. But because they are getting Clean and Green, they get a special tax preferential. And the taxes are, let's say, $5,000. Because that could be how much a reduction is. It could be half. Okay, I have seen it. So they're only paying 5 and not 10. Okay, it's in Clean and Green. The next person that wants to buy it is a developer. Okay, he wants to take that 15 acres and turn it into a townhome community. So as soon as he applies and takes it out of Clean and Green and starts developing the property, somebody is responsible for 7 years of back taxes on that. So 7 years, $5,000 discount. 7 times 5 is $35,000 that has to be paid back. Okay. Now, if it's caught during the deal or before you write the deal, okay, you can negotiate it. But if your buyer buys it and then takes it out of Clean and Green, they're stuck with it. Okay. So if you're working with a developer, and most developers will know this, but maybe some don't, or they've never had a property this big, you have to consider that. Okay. And one way to help them out, put it in their estimated costs. Any questions on that? 7 years. Okay. Open Space Act. This act enables counties to enter into covenants with owners of land designated as farm, forest, water supply, or open space land on an adopted municipal, county, or regional plan for the purpose of preserving the land as open space. A covenant between the owner and county is binding upon any buyer of the property during the period of time that the covenant is in effect, 5 or 10 years. Covenants automatically renew at the end of the covenant period unless specific termination notice procedures are followed. Buyer has been advised of the need to determine the restrictions that will apply from the sale of the property to buyer and the property tax implications that will or may result from a change in use of the property or any portion of it. Buyer is further advised to determine the term of any covenant now in effect. I've never really ran into this, so I can't really give a example of it, but obviously it's in here for some reason because it's happened. Conservation Reserve Enhancement Program. Properties enrolled in the Conservation Reserve Program, or CREP, are environmentally sensitive areas, the owners of which receive compensation in exchange for an agreement to maintain the land in its natural state. Contracts last from 10 to 15 years and carry penalties if sellers if terminated early by buyer. Let's reread that. Contracts last from 10 to 15 years and carry penalties to seller if terminated early by buyer. So if you're selling it to somebody and they terminate this conservation, the seller, sounds to me like, is the one that incurs the penalty, right? Buyer has been advised of the need to determine the restrictions on development of the property and the term of any contract now in effect. Seller is advised to determine the financial implications that will or may result from the sale of the property. So see, it's putting the financial implications on the seller right there 2 times. It states it. If you're going to sell something that's in the Conservation Reserve Program, you kind of almost have to have some kind of agreement with the buyer that they're going to keep it there. Next, E. Under seller representations, the real estate seller disclosure law. Generally, the real estate seller disclosure law requires that before an agreement of sale is signed, the seller in a residential real estate transfer must make certain disclosures regarding the property to potential buyers in a form defined by the law. A residential real estate transfer is defined as a sale, exchange, installment sales contract, lease with an option to buy, grant, or other transfer of an interest in real property where not less than 1, so there has to be some kind of property there, it can't be just vacant land, and not more than 4 residential dwelling units are involved. Disclosures for condominiums and cooperatives are limited to the seller's particular unit. Disclosures regarding common areas or facilities are not required, as those elements are already addressed in the laws that govern the resale of condominium and cooperative interests. So a lot there. The seller's property disclosure has to be filled out in a sale or some kind of transfer of real estate, okay? Even if it's a option to buy or rent to own situation, okay? As long as it has 1, 2, 3, or 4 units, you have to fill it out, okay? The disclosure for condos, remember, a condo is a type of ownership. So in a condo, you own from the wall in. So you're disclosing everything from the wall in. As far as the common areas of the condos, that's addressed in the resale cert. Okay. Now, does that mean if you know something, you shouldn't disclose it? No. If you know your condo, the roof is 28 years old and it's asking how old the roof is, you can say it's original because you know it, right? That's your disclosure. Any questions on the disclosure? Next, under seller representations, is the public and/or private assessments. Seller represents that as of the date seller signed this agreement, no public improvement, condominium, or homeowner association assessments have been made against the property which remain unpaid. And that no notice by any government or public authority, excluding assessed value, has been served upon seller or anyone on seller's behalf, including notices relating to violations of zoning, housing, building, safety, or fire ordinances that remain uncorrected. And that seller knows of no condition that would constitute a violation of any such ordinance that remain uncorrected, unless otherwise specified here. For example, last year they came and said, I need to replace the sidewalks by this September. Okay, or by the end of this year. Well, it's only October. So we'll let the buyer worry about it. Have to disclose it. Okay. Seller knows of no other potential notices, including violations and or assessments, except as follows. So the key word here is potential, right? Let's say you're selling the house right now and there was a meeting of the condo association. And they're saying, well, next year at some point we need new roofs. We don't have enough money for it. We're going to make a special assessment. And then a month later you go to sell a property. Do you have to disclose that? Mike?
Yes,
Yeah, because there's a potential, right?
correct.
I mean, they already said they're going to replace the roof. They don't have enough money. Those are facts. So, yep. Seller representation, highway occupancy permit. Access to a public road may require issuance of a highway occupancy permit from the Department of Transportation. Okay. You have a house, you want to make a U-shaped driveway. Just have one driveway going in right now, but you want to make it a U-shape and access, you know, in a U-shape. And your driveway, your house is located on Trindle Road or Wirtsville Road, 944. You have to get a permit from PennDOT in order to create a new driveway. Okay, it's for safety issues. Internet of Things, IoT devices, rings, ring doorbells, security cameras, alarm systems. Okay. This section has 4 paragraphs. So the first one, number 1, the presence of smart and green home devices that are capable of connecting to the internet directly or indirectly, and the data stored on those various devices make up a digital ecosystem in the property, sometimes referred to as the Internet of Things. Buyer and seller acknowledge that IoT devices may transmit data to third parties outside of the control of their owner. Okay, so paragraph number 1 is just kind of a notice for these IoTs. Okay. Paragraph number 2 is seller concentrated. On or before settlement, so not after, on or before settlement, it's up to the seller to make a reasonable effort to clear all the data on all IoT devices located on the property and included in the sale. Seller further acknowledges that all personal devices owned by seller, including but not limited to seller cell phones, personal computers, and tablets, have connectivity to any IoT devices located on the property, will be disconnected and cleared of relevant data prior to settlement. Further, no attempts will be made after settlement by seller or anyone on seller's behalf to access any IoT devices remaining on the property. Okay. For example, maybe a seller thinks it's funny that let's set the alarm off in the middle of the night, you know. that type of stuff. So the key there is on or before settlement, seller will. Okay. Now, following settlement, so after settlement, buyer will make a reasonable effort to clear all stored data. Okay. Paragraph number 4, this paragraph will survive settlement. Any questions? We're going to stop right there because it's going to start talking about contingencies, which we'll go over on Tuesday. But hopefully everybody learned something today. Shelley, you good?
There was something that I wanted to ask you about. I was just looking here. What it was. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I think
Ray,
it was up. I don't have that paper in front of me. Can you scroll up on that page?
mhm.
Yeah, because it was okay. Hold on a second here. One down a little was the next one, I think.
Disclosure?
There we go. Yes, that's what it is. Okay, so on the disclosure on the front page, it says that if it is an executor, an administrator, or whatever, and they've never lived in the property, they can sign the disclosure and not answer any questions.
Correct. And one thing I've always have executors do, I just ask them, especially if it's a property with utilities, right?
Okay,
Who's paying these utilities? Oh, I am.
okay,
Okay, what utilities are you paying? A water bill. Okay, so you have public water. Check mark that.
okay,
You're paying a gas bill? Okay, is that for heating? Yes. Mark that it has gas heat.
right.
You might not know the
Okay.
age of it, but you know what it is.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So if we have someone that acquired the property, never lived there, they're not an executor, they're not an administrator, they're an owner, but they have never lived in the property.
Mm-hmm.
So do they sign the front? They sign the back? Do they?
Actually, it's funny you say that. I'm going through it right now.
Okay.
Okay, the wife has, it's a husband and wife. The husband passed away. He has always handled everything with this. It was a rental from day one, when it was brand new up until today. Okay. And she has no clue about this property. So I made her meet me at the house and we went through the house and looked at the heating system and check marked it. Okay. And the things that she was unsure about, we left unknown. Okay.
Okay.
But on top of that, just to be sure, I asked her to do a pre-listing home inspection to attach to that disclosure.
Okay. I have a situation where the seller is now in a home. She has dementia. Her daughter is POA.
Mm-hmm.
The other daughter is on the deed as owner.
Mm-hmm.
But neither one of the girls have ever lived there. So
Mm-hmm.
should I go through the house with them and just try to mark what we know?
Let them mark it, but go through the house with them. Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
And try to fill out something.
Yeah. Because
there.
she's on the deed as a owner.
Right. Right. But
Yeah,
she's
she's not-
never been in the house.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. But I
Okay.
would note that too under owner and just say, how long have you lived here? Owner has never lived in this property, has never even entered the property. We're just owner on the deed.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Ray, any questions?
No questions. My only comment is on this contract, highway occupancy.
Yes.
It's assumed that it's the buyer's responsibility.
It's almost like a notice, right? highway occupancy permit. Access to a public road may require issuance of a highway occupancy permit from the Department of Transportation. If the buyer intends on doing something, then they need to make a contingency on either deed restrictions or whatnot, something in the contingency portion that will allow them enough time to get a highway occupancy permit. Who knows how long it'll take to get you one of those? I don't think that's one of those things where you can just get in like 5 or 10 days.
No, no, it takes a while. Whereas if this were a lot contract, it
Right,
could be negotiable as to who is responsible to get
sure.
that, unless the seller is responsible on a lot. Okay,
Right.
that's all I had.
Okay.
Mhm.
Anybody else? Megan, you okay? Okay. All right. Well, next week we'll start the contingencies. I think, what is that, page 7? We'll finish up page 6. Page 7 and page 8. Okay. So we're going to talk about deadlines of those things because it's actually a very good topic to go over because we're starting to do inspections again. So we want to make sure that you're ready for it. Okay. Awesome. Well, I'll see you guys next week. In the meantime, any questions, feel free to give us a call.